G'day guys, Ben Johnston from the Fight Centre here. I'm here with Sandy Pelenyi. She is a biomedical student at UQ, University of Queensland. She has she's basically biomedical science with honours, so if you want to elaborate on that further, but from my understanding, that's the research side of the study. So basically, I got Sandy to give me a hand with, I was trying to find a way for my fighters to basically be less likely to get injured. Trying to build a good team, trying to build a strong team of fighters and the more time they spend on the sidelines, the slower the progression. So I was sort of doing some research myself. My physiotherapist had given me some articles to read that had been basically given to the Australian Institute of Sport, and it took me like a week to get through them because I had to read each article multiple times. So I'd asked Sandy to have a bit of a look, and she was like, "No worries, I'll get back to you this afternoon. I got to work this afternoon. I'll get back to you." And so it took me a week. Sandy worked between the time I give it to her from like 2 in the arvo and I think it was like 9 o'clock at night. She sent me back a full report. So I was like,
that's what cramming teaches you at uni.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I didn't go to uni, obviously. So I thought, and rather than me just talk about this, and if you guys want to refer to that, we have a blog post on our website, muaythaibrisbane.com. There's an article there about overtraining. Go check it out. Sandy did the bulk of the work on that. I basically sent it to her. She rewrote it, sent
all of the information. It was just rearranging.
And totally, she left little bits in there so that I felt good. That's what it was. Like the start. Yeah, you wrote that.
They were good.
You helped. Yeah, that's what it was. Anyway, so basically, Sandy, if you don't mind, we'll just sort of go through some of these areas. And yeah, can you start? Just let us know what overtraining is. What are overtraining injuries?
So overtraining injuries are musculoskeletal injuries that occur when you increase the amount of exercise that you do or the intensity of that exercise.
Okay. So how would I avoid that?
So what you want to try to do is increase your weekly training load by no more than 10% each week.
Okay, and you track this, I'm guessing?
Yes. So the latest research shows that tracking your training workload using what is known as the acute-chronic workload ratio is an effective method that allows you to increase your performance but also reduce your injury risk.
Okay, and can you, beautiful. The acute workload, the chronic workload, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, okay, so the acute workload is your short-term training workload. So this is your training workload that occurs within 1 week.
Okay.
And then your chronic workload is more like your long-term workload. So that's training over a 4-week period.
Okay, so basically we've got training I did this week
Yeah.
compared to my average over the last month.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And what is the ratio between that? Like what I want to keep them similar? Is that the idea?
Yes, that's right. So you want to try and keep your acute workload and your chronic workload in a 1-to-1 ratio.
Right.
So this figure here demonstrates that quite nicely. So this is a figure from a publication by Gabbett in 2017.
Yeah.
So it plots the acute chronic workload ratio as a value against the likelihood of injury in percent. So
okay, so that means this would be 1-to-1 means I have been training exactly the same amount of training every week for the last 4 weeks, like
yes,
in a nutshell.
Basically, yes, that's right. Yeah.
And then if I'm over here, that means I was training a small amount at the start, and by the end I was training a lot more.
I think if you're over in this zone, that means your acute training workload is rapidly increased, but then your chronic is low.
Right. Yeah. So if I earlier on in the month, did I say week? Did I? No. Anyway, earlier on in the month, so the first of the 4 weeks, I wasn't doing much.
Yeah.
Or maybe not necessarily much, but I basically dramatically increased my training towards the end of those 4 weeks.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it's a gradual increment. That's how you increase over time.
And this here is our likelihood of getting injured, basically, right?
Yes.
So we're always training, always have some sort of risk of injury down here.
Yes, that's right.
But the more I rapidly increase, the higher that gets, the higher my percentage of.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and then also you need to take into account if you skew to the left and you have like the reverse of the ratio,
Yeah.
you're at an inadequate workload.
Right.
So you're not risking injury, but you're not doing enough either. So you
Totally.
really want to stay in this middle area where the performance is optimized, but the risk is really decreased.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
so
I
that's
like just thinking out loud.
Mm.
I might judge this one off if I'm a footy player.
Mm.
I'm judging that off 80 minutes of
Yes,
intense
that's
exercise.
right. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
At whatever intensity you are used to.
Totally.
Yeah.
Or what I'd play at on competition.
Yeah, that's right. So the chronic workload is what you're aiming to increase over time.
Totally.
Yes, and you increase the chronic workload by gradually increasing the acute workload
Right.
while they're staying at a 1-to-1 ratio as it progresses.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Or up to what 1.3, right?
Yeah. So we'll go through calculating how to do it first, but
Okay, cool.
so you can kind of understand where the calculations come from.
Sweet.
But really, you're trying to keep between 0.8 and 1.3 as your ratio value. Anything above that is unsafe. Anything below that is inadequate.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If you could take us through how we can calculate that, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. Did
Yeah,
you
we can
wanna
go through that. Definitely. Yeah.
So I think this was just an explanation of what the acute chronic workload utilizes. So
Yeah.
it's the concept of progressive overload. So people in the bodybuilding fields and everything, they understand very well what this means.
Yeah.
So an illustration to explain progressive overload is the story of Milo of Croton. So this is an ancient Greek wrestler, and he carried a calf until it grew into a bull, and he gained strength along the way, so gaining mass in small increments.
Totally.
Yeah, so you can imagine if untrained Milo of Croton jumped right to carrying like this big heavy bull. So obviously that's skyrocketing your acute workload with something that is just not sufficient.
Totally.
And you can imagine what the risk factor would be with
Right.
carrying this like large bull when you're not trained to do so. But whereas if you train in these smaller 10% increments,
Right.
then you'll be able to do this end point here.
So
And that's what the ACWR tracks for you.
Sweet. I'm probably about to jump ahead. I was going to say, so we have to look at that as a ratio. You've got a ratio of like 100 as opposed to 1.1, which is like, of course, he's going to get injured if he tries to pick up a ball fully.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like the mechanism that behind what the acute chronic workload utilizes is progressive overload. So that's what it's trying to do for you, basically.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, how do we calculate? Let's get into
All right. So firstly, you want to find the acute workload. So that's exercise in minutes times by intensity of training as a percent. So for example, this is all on the article as well, if you want to refer to that. So on Mondays, just say you do 60 minutes of training and you have an 8 out of 10 intensity. So that'll give you a value of 480. And you do that same thing for the rest of the week for training, and then you add all of these values together to get your acute workload.
Okay, so that's every session I did, the workload I did in that whole entire week, added together, that gives you my acute workload.
Yes, that's right. And then you can do your chronic workload from that. So what you just want to do is add the acute workload values together and then divide them by 4 to find the average of the chronic workload.
Okay,
And
so I've tracked every single week for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Divided it by the 4 weeks,
Yep.
and then that gives you my chronic workload.
Yep.
So in this example,
In that it is,
sweet. So in this example, we had the 1 week was 17. That's us there, isn't it?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
17.25.
Yeah.
The weeks before, where the average was 16.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that gives us 2 slides over, I think. Yep, and one more.
Yes.
Our ratio is 1.1,
Yeah.
which is under on our other one of the sweet spot was between 0.8 and 1.
0.8 and 1.3. So once you get your acute workload and chronic workload, you just divide the acute by chronic, and then it will just give you your ratio value. And so you want to aim to have that value to stay between 0.8 and 1.3. And you can see with this example, it definitely does fit that. And the examples are obviously personalized to your training routine. Like all of these values might be lower for someone. It
Totally.
just depends on the person, what they're doing.
Totally.
It's just a kind of an arbitrary value. You just need to have a value
Right.
for comparisons and to work from.
Right, and I guess like just the act of...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So I guess like the act of tracking it a lot of the time, just bringing awareness to it is probably the biggest battle, right?
That's exactly right, because who can estimate what 10% is of an increase each week? So we know that we need to increase by 10% to safely increase your fitness or whatever it is. So you need kind of like a foundation, like how are you actually going to monitor that, like and how are you going to do it accurately?
Yeah.
So this is a method that this will provide that for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not like fuck, I've gone one. I did accidentally, went 20% this week or something like that. But I think it's like I'm really guilty of this myself. Of like, I got something coming up,
going too hard,
and just go for it and get injured. And I've just been riddled with injuries. This is really why I sort of started getting.
Yeah, why you're interested in it in the first place.
Totally.
Yeah, you can apply it to yourself.
Riddled with injuries. And like, I'm trying to follow this, so I guess I'll be a good case study.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Trying to follow this myself as well to get back and compete myself. But like, I just noticed that once I started to monitor it, I realised how quickly I had got to that 10% extra each week.
Yeah, that's right. And because it doesn't feel like much, but it does a lot. It does a lot each week. It's like if you're doing, weight training.
It's
like
exponential,
increasing 10%, you're like, that's fuck all. But then if you think about, weeks later from there, that's a lot. That's a lot of increase, and it's a safe increase if you're doing it only in those small increments instead of like trying to lift a weight that's like 40 kilos heavier than what you're doing, or 40%. I mean, sorry.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I guess like even when I was doing it, I probably am overdoing the 10%.
Yeah.
But like, because like we showed before, we're still at 1.06. You can overdo it a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. There's still a bit of give. There's still a little bit of give there, depending on the person. It's also another factor that you've got to think about is like maybe your measurements for what's intense has changed.
Totally.
Yeah. So, maybe your fitness, like there's a lot of other factors that
even mentally, right?
Exactly. Like
sometimes
you're thinking it's 10% and you're like, it is. And other times you're like, oh, it couldn't be.
Totally.
You're doing a bad job today.
Well, you change your standards all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first, good example was the first time I ran 10 kilometers. It was like, that was a hurdle for me. Like, 10K run, fuck. And then I ran it. Didn't run for weeks. The next time I ran 10Ks.
Yeah, and it was easy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Following this, there was a really bad idea. Yeah. But it's just, just goes to show how hard it is to gauge, you know. So
and like this is also, it's percent of likelihood of injury risk. It doesn't mean you will always get an injury risk if you're 1.4 instead of 1.3, you're not always going to get it.
100%.
It just depends on what you're doing, depends on the sport, depends on you personally, your fitness and your health. And all that.
And sometimes you've got to take those risks, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm competing in 2 weeks, I got to, for a lot of people watching this probably are fighters, last minute call up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can do my 10% each week and run the risk of being unfit on the day. Yeah. It's like, well, you know what, this is a great opportunity. I'm fighting, who was that guy who fought Conor McGregor on 2 weeks' notice?
Oh, Diaz? No.
Oh, Diaz did it too. No. Luckily for Diaz though, he runs marathons.
Yeah, exactly. So he's already fit.
Right.
Yeah. And then his skills are already ingrained.
Totally.
So it's not
Totally.
He was, yeah.
But with there was another guy, I can't remember. Anyway, he was one who was like, I'm wrestling my nuts on your forehead or something like that.
Yeah, I think I remember that actually.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Like short notice, but he's gone, fuck it, man. I'm gonna fight Conor McGregor as if I'm probably my biggest payday ever, as if I'm not going to try, you know?
That's right. And that person was definitely increasing their injury risk, but they thought it's a gamble, fuck it, I'm just going to do it.
Totally.
But at the same time, when we're talking about people who are just starting to become more professional in the fighting game, and you have this longer amount of time for training, you really want to protect them, you want to make sure that they don't get injured and they're not seasoned,
That's
famous
right.
MMA players and whatever.
That's right.
So fighters. So giving them something like this to design a way to increase their training capacity is beneficial. Whereas once you get to the very top, you can kind of do what you want a little bit. You know your own body too.
Yeah.
You know how you can push yourself. But if someone's naive, and they don't really know how to increase their training
Yep.
training regime, then this is like a good way just to get them going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even like those guys would take those risks year round.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It would be like depending on how they feel. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If they had a really, really important fight coming up, they probably wouldn't even fight, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
And that's their choice. Yeah.
And would you like some suggestions of ways to monitor this? I know we said it doesn't matter too much. Like, for me, don't get caught up in it too heavy of like how many kilometers, how fast, how far. You know, a good thing is like measuring the amount of energy put in, or measuring distance or volume. You know, is a good way.
Yeah.
But like heart rate monitor,
heart rate monitor is a good one. That's definitely a good one because that's a good indicator of your cardiorespiratory fitness as well. So increasing but not going over a certain value depending on you.
Okay, can you just break that down a bit for me? The cardiorespiratory fitness, what that?
So that is the ability of your heart to pump blood into your body and perfuse your tissue.
And
so
that basically,
you can use a heart rate monitor to get a value of that.
So that means if your heart's working too hard, you're not fit. Like,
yes, basically. Yeah, you use
totally.
one though.
Totally, I'm more breaking this down for
you can explain it.
You do a much better job. I'd be like, anyway.
It's just another good way to track the intensity or the amount of exercise that you do.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the little parameters that you could use. It's like a heart rate monitor watch to gauge the intensity of that exercise set. So obviously, if your heart rate isn't raised for long enough, then you can extrapolate that the intensity wasn't very high for that particular session. So you would give that 50 out of 100.
Yeah.
Whereas if heart rate was high for a very long time.
And how about even calories?
Calories is also a really good one.
Or calories burnt during a session, right?
Yes, calories consumed. Definitely a really good one. I think the Apple Watches have how many? I think Jade has. They do. I know they're inaccurate, but it doesn't really matter, right? Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, inaccurate
because you're using the same watch each time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and plus, like for what you're using it for, it's accurate enough.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're doing an experiment and you need to know, the exact value.
No, that's right. Yeah.
It's just like a general, like an estimation. So that's definitely good enough. So you could track how your calorie expenditure, your heart rate, all of those different factors can come in for intensity. And even how you feel in your recovery too, that's probably a good indicator of intensity, like how sore you are the next day and all of that. Yeah.
I know some guys use them like upon wake up is like where their heart rate is compared to normal, if your heart rate's
low.
Exactly. If it's high, it's like, why am I like 6 beats a minute higher than yesterday?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you probably need a rest, you know?
Definitely.
But I know, like, even myself, I had my heart rate monitor was like more specific to me. I did a resting metabolic rate, and just cost me a fucking arm and a leg, But it's great because I have more of awareness of how much I'm actually burning.
Exactly, and see when you use values, you really see what's actually happening. When you're estimating, you can kind of like people are biased naturally too. So like, I felt like I did a good, intense. Workout, but really it's more like I don't want to do that again because it hurt, so I'm just going to say it was intense. But if you have a value, you can't lie about that.
Absolutely.
And then
it was funny early on, like years and years ago, I used to think I'm training too much. Started to monitor it and went,
and you're like, I'm
not
doing
training enough. And now it's the exact opposite. Like I'm doing way too much.
Exactly.
Even when I'm training for a fight, like it was funny because I started monitoring these training sessions, how much work I was doing in them, and I realised that like I've just been under-eating for the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. Yeah, you can underestimate your workload too by a significant amount.
And we're not giving that means that way we're basically not fueling the machine.
Yeah, that's right.
The machine's more likely to break down.
Exactly. Yeah, and have no energy, increased risk of injury. That's another thing too. But yeah, I was going to say before. So it's kind of hard if you're looking at sort of like cardio fitness, like the kind of things that Muay Thai fighters are like looking for. Whereas like if you're a bodybuilder, you have a lot of values you can use.
Totally.
You can have the amount of weight that you're using,
weights,
and then
reps.
10% in weights and reps. These are all numbers. and then they calorie count, they count their macros, they do all of that. So these are all numbers-based things.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're paying attention and you're monitoring properly, you know, your training skyrockets.
Yeah.
Whereas like Muay Thai, it's a little bit more difficult. You have to use a heart rate monitor, you have to kind of like gauge these things.
5
If you can
rounds.
find a value,
Totally.
Yeah.
5 rounds of bag work doesn't always. Not every round is
Is
equal.
it gentle bag work or
Totally.
is it intense? Like if you're sparring, is it someone hard or someone kind of cushy? Like,
100%.
There's differences there.
I used to hear it all the time. Like,
Even some of my fighters. Yeah, man, I did this many rounds on the bag. Like, fuck, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, like,
You know,
to
like-
what degree is...
Yeah,
Like
if I'm not
bag work.
watching, like,
I don't know
I have
if
no idea.
Yeah,
you know?
it could be, you know, gentle.
Totally,
Yeah.
and that's what a lot of time what happens, you know, because when you're, and you know, I know this is getting a bit sidetracked, but having someone else there to, you know, like gauge the standard for you is a good idea. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And even as a trainer, you know, you
Absolutely.
could give people values of what you think is intense.
Absolutely,
You're trained to do that.
that's our
something.
job.
So you can use all of like the other things like heart rate monitor, calories, all of that stuff, and their idea of what their intensity was, and then your idea of what it was after
Yeah.
watching them for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And maybe you can make an average out of that, and then
Yeah.
that can be their intensity.
well, you can calibrate off it, really, can't you?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, well, that actually was, you know, as a trainer,
Yeah.
you're always trying to get the best out of your guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, fuck, I'm pushing these guys too hard, you know, which is common, so common. Even this is actually important for all the trainers to hear as well, but a lot of trainers will have this warped perception of how hard they used to train.
Yeah.
And how hard they used to do it. Oh, no, mate, we fucking did this and we used to be running through the snow barefoot in the middle of
rocky
Brisbane.
shit.
Yeah, you know, like,
Yeah.
but and it's probably true. Might
Is it that
happen
different
once.
from
You know what I mean? But
yeah, that's right, and
what-
that's the highlight.
100%.
Yeah, all the bad times don't come through.
100%. It's like you can walk. Like the memory is a funny thing. You know?
That's right. You don't rely on it.
No.
You don't rely on that or your personal opinion of what it was. Like you want to really use some parameters that like give it a solid baseline.
Don't they say like in a court of law, a person's testimony is one of the least reliable things?
Yeah.
You know, like because it starts changing
Because we're
immediately.
selective. We're selective when we recall a memory.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's right.
Guilty of it myself. You know.
Yeah.
I think everyone is.
Oh,
Jinx.
great minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like no, I think it is very important for trainers to be aware of this, you know, and just think long term. Like,
Yeah, that's right, and that's what this is. Like, it's a regimen for long-term training, and like it has to be a collaboration between the trainer, you know, and the trainee.
Totally.
And this is something that like you can choose together. You can choose the acute workload with your fighter
Have a
and
plan,
design
right?
it together. Yeah, and then go through it like that.
100%.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you feel like we've missed in this?
I think I'd like to speak about what evidence supports the acute-chronic workload ratio, because I think it's quite a heavily studied monitoring method. So this is just like a way for you to kind of like understand that it really is effective. So in 2015, they did a cohort study, examined elite rugby players. So this was over a duration of about 2 years. And what they did was use like a workload model to predict injuries. And then they had one group of the players exceed the threshold, so go above that 10% increment each week. And they found that there was 70 times more non-contact soft tissue musculoskeletal injuries in those players. And then the other players that didn't exceed the threshold each week, so the players that were increasing in 10% increments were 1/10 less often likely to get injuries. So this is very solid evidence, and it's like that paper showed that, but then there's also many other papers in lots of different sports that show that too. So it's not just Muay Thai, it's across all of the sports. And it's basically just saying if you rapidly increase that workload too quickly, you're going to get injured, and that's like well documented, well supported.
And that's even talking about in sports where like we don't have the factors of getting kicked or
Exactly. Like in cricket, they did studies in cricket, but then they did like rugby and MMA, all of those. And so obviously in combat sports,
it's not like I broke my nose. It's like I tore
a ligament. Exactly. That's right.
Cool. No, that's cool. Basically, you're doing there what I did with you. Like, I need someone who's better fucking versed in this to back me up what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like this is research. This is not Ben and
that's
Sandy
right.
in a room
Yeah,
talking
we're
about
not just
something.
giving opinions. This is based on real data.
Totally.
And it's widely used as a reliable method. You can even get the acute-chronic workload ratio as an app, just like you can a calorie counter app.
Cool.
So, and they're pretty accurate. Given that your parameters for monitoring your actual performance are accurate, then it will give you an accurate reading, and then you can increase your training workload by 10% specifically using that app.
Numbers don't lie.
Yeah. I don't know the name of the app though. You can find that.
Google it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much.
It's alright.
Very, very helpful. For anyone who wants to go into this a little bit more, we have, like I said, we have an article, www.muaythaibrisbane.com. Go to our blog section there, have a look for the article on overtraining, so how to avoid overtraining.
And if you want to calculate your own values for the acute chronic workload ratio, you can follow the samples that are in that article too. So you can just plug your numbers into that and then get your value. Yeah.
Cool, that's about it. Thanks guys. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. We'll do this again.
Okay.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.